Dear friends, this is great to open our 18 online academic session. I welcome you from all over the world. This is a very special session. First of all, because we are beginning a new year, 2024. This is great. The second thing that it is very important for CoMeT family is that we are going to celebrate the great Guy Cornu from Lyon with his dear family and all his CoMeT family. As you know, Guy Cornu, Marc Bouchaillet are two of the greatest friends of CoMeT family. And third, because we are celebrating part of the life of a very, very great singer, Maria Callas. So we shall enjoy another program and another academic session online. And many of our CoMeT family members could not be together with us, but I hope they do enjoy when we have this session in YouTube. Of course, as you know, YouTube cannot allow all the permission for all the things that we are going to present. But anyway, we shall enjoy that in YouTube. Do not forget to say hello to all the CoMeT members family when you are in YouTube. And of course, now we shall begin with the first slide. Can you please run these slides? Bruno Colombo, mon chéri Bruno Colombo.
Hola,
from
¿qué tal?
Lyon. Yes, I am so happy that you join us, and of course Annie Cornu and Samuel and Marc Bouchaillet and all the dear friends from Guy Cornu are also here, and many of them, as you know, have sent many greetings and kisses and special thoughts to Guy family and also to Guy, because we know Guy is with us all the time. And lieber Professor Dr. Wolfram Seiner, das ist angenehm, das ist fantastisch, dass du hier bist. Wolfram Seiner from Berlin, also a very close friend, CoMeT friend from Guy Cornu. So, dear friends, we shall begin. If we can please put the next slide. So I welcome you to this new time, because as you know, in the General Assembly, everybody decided that we shall keep on with our wonderful virtual online academic sessions. But we also will have the face-to-face annual conference with the President Erky Bianco, and many of our CoMeT sessions with our international dear friends all over the world. The next one, please. And so we begin with our first presentation. This is Callas in Mexico, Veni Vidi Vici, tribute to the centenary of her birth, soprano assoluta of the 20th century. And our special guest is a very dear friend, Charles Oppenheim. He is editor of the very specific and special magazine Pro Opera, and he's also the artistic director of Opera of San Miguel. It's a wonderful place in Mexico, and he's also a singer. The next one, please. I shall read a little bit about his curriculum. La siguiente, the next one. Yuhu. Okay, with bachelor's degree in mass communications from the Ibero-American University in Mexico City, Charles has worked as a journalist and a translator for over 45 years in magazines, newspaper, radio, television, and the internet. He is the editor, as I told you before, of Pro Opera magazine, in Spanish, of course, and it's also virtual. And he is the artistic director of the Opera of San Miguel. In the next weeks, we shall have also contest in this opera, because as you know, in Mexico, we have great, great singers. And so this is a very special opera for us. The next one, please. And also, in parallel to his editorial career, he has participated as an actor in theater, television, and cinema, and as an opera singer since 2003. He has sung in recitals and concerts, and he has staged in several operas. Since his debut at the Palace of Fine Arts in Mexico City in 2005, he has sung 40 operatic roles for bass by composers such as Donizetti, Mozart, Rossini, and Verdi, as well as symphonies, oratorios, and cantatas in the principal theaters and with many of the great orchestras and opera companies in Mexico. And I welcome you, Charles. And nice to have you here also in person. The next one, please. So we shall enjoy this presentation, but I need to tell you something about the Palace of Fine Arts, where Maria Callas were visiting. It was one of the, after Italy and USA, it was one of the countries where she performed in wonderful things and operas. And the Palace of Fine Arts was beginning to be built in 1904. And because of many things, mainly the Mexican Revolution in 1910, the construction of this big palace was ended in 1934. Adam Boari, an Italian architect, was in charge of this, and there were very interesting development in this huge palace because we began with Art Nouveau and then Art Deco and then Neoclassicism. So it's a construction that you have to visit. Some of you have been with me in Mexico CoMeT Congress. And as you see here, the Palace of Fine Arts is a huge monument in Mexico downtown. And you see here the inside of the theater where Maria Callas was also singing. And we have this very special Tiffany glass curtain. As you see here, the volcanoes. I shall send you later some other pictures because the Valley of Mexico City is surrounded by mountains and mainly by two volcanoes, Iztaccíhuatl and Popocatépetl. And so here is a very short story from the warrior Popocatépetl. Is a volcano that still has smoke, and Iztaccíhuatl is the sleeping princess that is waiting for the warrior. So this is like a small announcement of Palace of Fine Arts. And this Palace of Fine Arts, because it is not only opera, it's a museum where Siqueiros, Frida Kahlo, Rivera, and many great painters are here. And also we have another amenity. So we have theater, we have concerts, we have opera in this huge Palace of Fine Arts. The next, please. And so Maria Callas, as Charles is going to tell us, was at the beginning in the International National of Palace of Fine Arts Institute. She was presenting herself as a Maria Meneghini Callas, and then she changed to Maria Callas. The next one, please. And we shall see the next one. The next slide, please.
Hello, my name is Charles Oppenheim, editor of Pro Opera magazine. I would like to thank Dr. Rosa Eugenia Chavez for inviting me to speak with you today. The title of this lecture is Callas in Mexico, Veni, Vidi, Vici. Last December, we celebrated the centenary of the birth of Maria Callas, without a doubt the soprano assoluta of the 20th century. And that's why I would like to talk about her and her time in Mexico. I have selected and edited several excerpts from memoirs, opera reviews, and biographies of men that knew Callas, saw her perform, and were important in her life in one way or the other, especially during the unforgettable 3 years that she sang in Mexico. The first man who I will mention is the one who discovered her, having just arrived in New York from Athens at the end of World War II, and offered her her first contract. Giovanni Zenatello, a dramatic tenor born in Verona in 1876. He was a friend of Giacomo Puccini, who wrote for him the role of Pinkerton in Madama Butterfly for the premiere at La Scala in Milan in 1904. He was also one of the best Otellos of his time. In fact, in 1917, he visited Mexico on an artistic tour where he sang, among other operas, a memorable Carmen by Bizet in the Mexico City bull ring with his wife, the Catalan mezzo-soprano Maria Guy. This feat occurred 2 years before the more famous visit of his Neapolitan colleague, Enrico Caruso, and the contralto Gabriella Besanzoni, who also sang Carmen in the bull ring. Senatello was the founder of the Arena di Verona Festival, and as artistic director, he was in New York in 1946 looking for singers for the following summer season of the festival. It was then that he auditioned Maria and offered her her first contract in Italy to sing Ponchielli's La Gioconda in 1947 with the American tenor Richard Tucker. This was a big watershed in her budding career. Needless to say, there in Verona, she met the Veronese businessman, Giambattista Meneghini, who would become her patron, mentor, manager, and husband. Before becoming La Callas, Maria made her professional operatic debut in Athens as Tosca in 1942. She was only 19 years old then. When she made her debut in Verona, she was 24. In Greece and Italy, she first dedicated herself to singing dramatic Italian and Wagnerian roles, but then the other great watershed occurred. Callas sang her first Norma in Florence in 1948. And it was the following year in Venice, when 3 days after concluding her roles in Wagner's Die Walküre, she made her debut as Elvira in Bellini's I Puritani, a feat. During the decade that she was married to Meneghini from 1949 to 1959, under the direction of Tullio Serafin, Maria gradually left those dramatic roles to fully venture into the bel canto repertoire and devote herself to the recovery of works of classicism and rare Italian operas of the 19th century. By the time she made her debut at La Scala in Milan in 1950, after her first visit to Mexico, she was already on her way to becoming an international star, although she would soon begin to suffer vocal problems. Uneven registers, harshness in the middle voice, tremolo in the sustained high notes, and media scandals that would lead in the following decade to her gradual withdrawal from the stage until she made her last operatic appearance as Tosca in Covent Garden on July 5th, 1965. Even then, paraphrasing a quote from a French author, although Callas's voice was in ruins, like the Acropolis of Athens, it was still equally beautiful. Only 23 years passed between that first Tosca in Athens and the last Tosca in London, but it was time enough for her to add 47 leading roles to her repertoire. She set foot on the most important theater and concert hall stages in the world, and not considering the countless recordings she made during her live performances for radio, she recorded 43 commercial studio albums. As Harold Schonberg points out in his book, The Glorious Ones, Classical Music's Legendary Performers, Callas lived in a time when there were better vocalists than her, but she possessed that indefinable something that made her the greatest in the world: intelligence, musicality, magnetism, presence, intensity, a great capacity for work, ambition, cruelty, mystery, and a voice that, although it was not beautiful in itself, possessed great expressive and communicative power. She emerged as a superstar after the Second World War, when many European theaters were in ruins or under reconstruction, which meant that Latin American countries such as Argentina, Brazil, and Mexico could count on her and the most famous colleagues of her generation leading the casts of their productions. And as fate would have it, in the early years of the 1950s, the best from the point of view of Calas's vocal health before her 30th birthday, 3 tours of La Divina were made to Mexico, where the first recordings were made of variable quality, since voices far from the stage can be heard, clicking heels and other noises, coughs from the audience, the screams of the prompter, of the 8 complete operas that she sang live with a total of 30 performances. These 8 operas are just a small sample of this vast bel canto, romantic, and verismo repertoire. 2 operas by Bellini, 1 by Donizetti, 4 by Verdi, and 1 by Puccini. But they were enough to create loyal fan groups that exist to this day. Therefore, 73 years after that first visit of Calas to Mexico, we can affirm with the Latin phrase attributed to Julius Caesar when he conquered the kingdom of Pontus, located on what is today the Turkish coast of the Black Sea, Veni, Vidi, Vici, because Calas came, she sang, and she conquered the opera-going public of Mexico. Before Mexico, Calas conquered Greece, Italy, and Argentina. After Mexico, Calas took over the rest of the world. Giambattista Meneghini, as I mentioned, met Maria when she was just making her debut at the Arena di Verona in 1947. And he was immediately very impressed with her. They fell in love, and in 1949, they got married. For Maria's first season in Mexico, she was not able to accompany her. He was not able to accompany her because he was in the process of selling his shares in the family company so that he could devote himself, body and soul, to managing his wife's career. In his book, My Wife, Maria Calas, Meneghini reproduces the letters Maria wrote to him during her first trip to Mexico. And here are some of those excerpts. At the beginning of May of 1950, Maria left for a season in Mexico, writes Giambattista Meneghini, where she stayed for almost 2 months. It was necessary to make a stopover and change planes in New York, and Maria took the opportunity to visit her parents. But things did not develop as Maria had anticipated. Her mother had decided to divorce George Calas and come live with us in Verona. And this worried her because it evoked memories of the ugly times in Greece, and she feared that the discord, the disagreements, the hateful scenes with her mother would be repeated. Those thoughts haunted her all the time of her stay in Mexico, putting her on the verge of a nervous breakdown. All the letters that Maria wrote from Mexico included passages about her mother. This concern was a fixed idea, and she could not shake it. Maria's depression and difficulties, the nervousness and periods of insomnia that she attributes in her letters to the weather, the high altitude of Mexico City, the lack of organization, the perversity of her colleagues, her separation from me, all of that really came from her family problems, which she had never been able to fully resolve. These are some of the lines she wrote to me as soon as she arrived in Mexico City. May 25th, 1950. My dear Giambattista, my beloved, I am writing to you at the horrendous hour, 7:30 in the morning. I didn't sleep all night, so you can imagine how I am. I live in this strange state of apathy. I have little resistance because of this damned climate, and also because of the altitude, which weakens my strength. The representations follow one another in their own regrettable way, to the point that if I were in normal conditions, I would rebel and put these fools in their place. But I don't even have the strength to do so. I move like a cretin, in the true sense of the word, and I hope to survive another month of this tiring and poorly executed task. I also face physical problems that have contributed to aggravate the situation. In recent days, we have all suffered from diarrhea, and no one knows what the cause is. In Mexico, we call it Moctezuma's revenge. Batista, the distance between us greatly influences me, says Maria Callas. Not only for the simple reason of the physical need I feel for my husband, but for a combination of things that I miss. I can't continue without you. Everything that happens, an unimportant illness, a stupid setback, makes me feel the absence of our affection even more. Curiously, Maria does not talk in her letters to Meneghini about her debut in Mexico as Norma and the unusual and mixed reaction of the public. For that, we have to refer to eyewitnesses of these historic functions. Here is the first, an essay published in Pro Opera magazine in May-June of the year 2000, written by José Carlos González as part of his memoirs, titled La Divina Celebrates Her Golden Anniversary. He wrote it to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Maria Callas's debut in Mexico. In that essay, he wrote the following fragments. On the night of May 23rd, 1950, I entered Bellas Artes to witness my first live Norma, just 5 days before turning 17 years old. At last came the long-awaited appearance of the priestess, who at the conclusion of the aria Casta Viva received the sincere applause that we gave her, and although we were many, not the entire theater. The strange quality of her voice confused a part of the audience, and it was not until the intermission when the opinions of those of us to whom she had seemed exceptional dominated the undecided, even the many opera maniacs who were incredulous of what was happening. The sound authorship of the first bravo that Callas heard in Mexico belongs to me. And to that, I owe that Maria received me many years later in Paris at her house on the Rue Georges Mandel. As the performance progressed, the audience began to recognize Meneghini Callas as a wonderful soprano. The extraordinary volume of her voice, which flooded even the deaf seats in the back of the first floor at the Palace of Fine Arts, made it very clear that she was not like some of the voices that we opera lovers disparagingly call front row singers, because in the second row, they are no longer heard. The following week, she reappeared in Aida, and we heard the most famous E-flat in the history of opera, debatable for not having been written by Verdi, but indisputable for the impact caused by the supreme culmination of Callas's voice. That note from the 1951 performances traveled the world as something unusual, having been recorded on tapes, acetates, and now on CD. We were unaware of the fights between the forum and the dressing rooms, and we only witnessed what was happening in the performance. But later, due to our relationship with Carlos Díaz Dupont, who was the stage director and author of the book Opera in Mexico from 1924 to 1984, we learned that when Maria arrived in Mexico, that great impresario, to whom all opera lovers in this country owe the golden age of opera, Antonio Caraza Campos, told her that 19th century Mexican soprano Ángela Peralta had emitted an E-flat at the end of the great concertante of the second act, and that he wanted her to do the same. Maria did not agree, because that note had not been written by the composer. But after the quarrels she was having with tenor Kurt Baum, who insisted on sustaining his high notes for ages, she finally decided to launch the famous note, with the consequent anger of the latter, who shouted at her that she would never sing at the Met, but with the delirious ovation that she immediately obtained with the audience. How he would have to swallow his words when on November 22nd and 27th, 1956, at the old Metropolitan Opera House in New York, after 4 successful performances of Norma with Callas and Mario del Mónaco, Baum had to replace the latter and sing with Maria. I mentioned Carlos Diaz Dupont already. In 1950, he was appointed deputy manager of the National Opera. In his book, 50 Years of Opera in Mexico, he wrote the following. Don Antonio, speaking of Caraza Campos, structured his season based on the singers. He chose a repertoire according to the voices and hired the best Mexican singers available to complete the casts. The 1950 season began with Norma, with Maria Meneghini Callas, Giulietta Simeonato, Kurt Baum, and Nicola Moscona. But before saying anything about this performance, I am going to tell how I met Maria Callas, writes Carlos Diaz Dupont. When I saw her at the hotel, I was frozen. She was a tall, thick woman with bottle-bottom glasses, as we say here in Mexico. Don Antonio told me that bass Cesare Siepi had recommended Callas for her extraordinary coloratura dramatic soprano voice that reached E-flat in a surprising way, that she had sung in Venice Brunilde, Kundry, and Elvira from I Puritani, an unusual case in the history of opera. Callas and Simeonato began to rehearse the duets, and my immediate reaction was to call Don Antonio, saying, "Come quickly! Callas has the most fabulous dramatic coloratura voice that I have ever heard or imagined. It is essential that you come at once to listen to this wonder." A few minutes later, Don Antonio arrived with a score of I Puritani and said very quietly to me, "Ask Callas if she can sing for us the E-flat in one of the arias." I had to act as an interpreter because Don Antonio spoke neither English nor Italian, much less Greek. The response was blunt. "Tell Don Antonio that if he wants to hear my E-flat, he should give me a contract to sing I Puritani, as that opera has 6 E-flats. 2 years later, in 1952, Don Antonio planned what would turn out to be the best season of the National Opera. Seeing that it was not essential to import too many singers, he hired Maria Callas for $2,000 per performance, more than double what she had been paid in 1950. I introduced to tenor Giuseppe Di Stefano, Pipo, as his friends in Mexico called him, with Maria in the Bellas Artes Theater at the first rehearsal of I Puritani. The inauguration was on May 29th. When Maria entered the scene in the second scene of the first act, there were people, probably advised by Batista, Callas's husband, who had now accompanied her in her last season in Mexico, who applauded, but the hiss immediately silenced them. This caused Maria to cry. She was devastated in the dressing room and thought it was her who had been hissed at. Di Stefano entered the dressing room and told her, "Maria, you have sung like the eternal Father," a very Italian expression, and I had to insist that in Mexico, it was not customary to applaud artists when they enter the stage. It took the ovation for the Polonaise and then the Madness aria in the third act for Maria to be convinced that she was still an idol in Mexico. Di Stefano, who was in full voice, caused a sensation. And in the duet of the last act, the theater collapsed with the ovation for the two divos who lavished high notes. Piero Campolonghi, the baritone, and Roberto Silva, the bass, completed the quartet with dignity. Ángel R. Esquivel was by profession a baritone, and throughout his international career, he sang more than 40 operatic titles, especially in Europe, and especially by Verdi and Puccini, including Rigoletto, Otello, Il Trovatore, and his final performance was in Puccini's La Bohème in 1944. He later became a stage director and a voice teacher for many famous Mexican singers. And he also worked for many years as an opera critic for the newspaper El Universal, from which the following reviews were published. June 13th, 1952. Lucia at the Bellas Artes. What a great night, an unforgettable night last Tuesday with Lucia. The evening took place in an atmosphere of unusual enthusiasm that translated into delirious acclaim for the artists. After having previously heard the soprano Maria Callas in the operas I Puritani and La Traviata, we were sure of the success that she would undoubtedly achieve in Lucia de Lammermoor. But everything we say about her is pale. We lack adjectives to value this distinguished work. We believe that from now on, this opera, Lucia di Lammermoor, will be the one in her repertoire that will bring her the greatest glories. Maria Callas rose to incredible heights in the first act, but in the third, she was sublimated. Can greater perfection be conceived in the execution of those chromatic scales, trills, gruppetti, appoggiature, and portamenti? How much purity of sounds! That night, the actress and the singer were equally glorified. During the performance, the artists received warm applause, but when this turned into frantic clamor was when Maria Callas finished the popular Madness aria of the third act. The clapping turned into shouts of bravo from an audience delirious with enthusiasm. Maria Callas and Di Stefano had to take curtain calls countless times due to the audience's applause that seemed to have no end. Here is another review by Ángel R. Esquivel, published on June 6, 1952. La Traviata at the Bellas Artes. The full house registered last Tuesday at the Bellas Artes with La Traviata comes to distort the idea that the public is already tired of this repertoire. The protagonist of the opera, mentioned above, was entrusted, as in the previous season, to the excellent diva, Maria Meneghini Callas. The success achieved has only one precedent, her own. Once again, we admired her beautiful figure, the magnificence of her attire, the exquisiteness of her bearing, animated by a refinement of gestures, that the grace of her hands that speak, express the diversity of situations her character goes through. In a word, Maria Callas, in the role of Violetta from La Traviata, has reached perfection. The actress is as great as the singer. I remember so many beautiful passages with which such an eminent singer delighted us in the course of her interpretation. Who is able not to surpass, but to at least equal her phrases? Amami Alfredo, or Parigi, o cara. And who possesses that power of voice, those prodigious high notes, those pearly scales, and the clarity of her marvelous agility? And once again, I will cite the memoirs of Carlos Diaz Dupont from Callas's last season in Mexico City, 1952. Pipo and Callas had maintained cordial relations and shared the ovations of an audience gone crazy in Puritani, La Traviata, and Lucia. But Tosca came, and the most interesting, shall we say, incident arose, given the temperament of the divas. In the first function of Tosca, which would be Maria's last performance in Mexico, I asked the orchestra to play Las Golondrinas, a popular song for saying goodbye to someone in Mexico. This was at the end of the opera, when the two singers came out on stage. When the audience realized that the song meant that this was about saying goodbye to Maria, as they began to shout, Maria, come back. Callas, return. Di Stefano, who spoke Spanish very well, imagined that it was a tribute only to Maria and politely kissed her hand, and he left her alone on the stage. When Las Golondrinas was over, Maria looked for people to take a final curtain call with him again, but he had disappeared. The audience reacted, and realizing that people had sung the last act wonderfully, they began to shout, Di Stefano, Di Stefano! Don Antonio ordered me to run to his dressing room and to tell him to come back out. But I found him in a rage, completely undressed, and he shouted a series of expletives, naturally in Italian, against Maria, against the company. He finally said that he would never sing with Callas again. I couldn't call him down. When Maria returned to her dressing room after the ovations that continued endlessly for her, Pipo was already on his way back to his hotel. Maria and Batista left the next day without saying goodbye to the Di Stefano. Epilogue. Callas' seasons in Mexico concluded, as did the beginning and the end of her career, with Tosca. Fortunately, people did sing with Maria Callas again and again and again. They performed numerous more times and recorded countless works together for posterity. Thanks for your attention.
So as we have enjoyed all the anecdotes and histories, and of course the short videos that we wanted to show you, we have a great artist in front of us. And I would like to tell you that our dear Franco Fusi is going to talk about Callas and some technical things of the singing technique in our next conversation. Unfortunately, he could not come today because he had another commitments, but we enjoy very much with this Charles Oppenheim speaker and presentation. Well, I would like to say hallo, lieber Professor Jürgen Wendler, das ist fantastisch, Sie zu sehen. Mon chéri, Romain Perouse from Lyon, very nice to have you here. Our dear Sarah Harris and Tom Harris from London are also here with us. Unfortunately, I think Marc Bouchaillet had to leave, but anyway, as I told you, we are going to have all these presentations. And of course, I shall send you all the correct links from YouTube so you can enjoy Maria Callas whenever you want. And the next one, please. Now we begin with our dearest friend, Guy Cornu. I met Guy Cornu many years ago. He was such a wonderful professor, such a wonderful human being. And we are going to enjoy the presentation and small tribute to Guy Cornu and his dear family, Between Music and Phoniatry, Guy Cornu, A Life for Voice Tribute. This is a presentation that I enjoy very much from our dear CoMeT friend, Bruno Colombo. And as you remember, some sessions ago, I think about 2 years ago, we had the honor to make honorary member Marc Bouchaillet and Guy Cornu. So I remember also personally when I was visiting Lyon and visiting Guy Cornu and Bruno Colombo, Romain Perouse, and Marc Bouchaillet. It was in a very special day, not nice day, when the New York towers were hidden by the airplanes. I got to Lyon. So I always remember my staying in Lyon because after this tragedy of New York, I was enjoying the company of Guy, his music, the company of Bruno, Roman, Elizabeth, and Anne. Thank you very much, Bruno, and let's enjoy the presentation. Next, please.
Between Music and Phoniatry, Guy Cornu, a life dedicated to voice. Guy Cornu passed away on Saturday, January 6, 2024. He was born in 1931 in the Ardèche village Entraigues-sur-Volane, and he took up music at an early age while attending the minor seminary in Aubenas. From then on, he learned piano and singing, building up a solid musical training. An accomplished reader, it was a book by the American author Frank Slaughter, That None Should Die, in French, Afin que nul ne meure, that turned him towards medicine, although a musical career also attracting him. As a high school student in Valence, he completed an internship at an institute for the insane people, which ultimately decided him to pursue medicine rather than music, since the conservatoire, a training ground for professional musicians, only accepted young students. It was also in Valence that he conducted his first high school choir at the age of 17. After arriving in Lyon in 1951 to study medicine, his musical skills propelled him to become director of the Chorale Mixte Universitaire de Lyon in 1952, where he was already confronted with the problems of the choristers' vocal health. In addition to rehearsals, he also received his choristers in small groups to work on vocal technique. On the medical front, Guy was initially interested in neuropsychiatry, and he completed an externship in ENT, during which the heads of his units at the time, Professor Mounier-Kuhn and above all Professor Jean Gaillard, encouraged him as a musician to take an interest in the specialty of phoniatry, which no one was practicing in Lyon at that time, and whose existence he discovered. At the time, Dr. Jean Tarnot, a famous Parisian phoniatrist and one of the founders of the Société Française de Phoniatrie, was running the only hospital unit in France providing vocal rehabilitation. Since 1930, he had also been teaching the first French course in laryngology and phoniatry in collaboration with Madame Suzanne Borel-Maisonnier, a pioneer of speech therapy in France. Reading Jean Tarnot's books fascinated Guy Cornu, and in 1953 he was sent to work with this pioneer at Paris, at Hôpital Lariboisière and Hôpital Bellan. Guy traveled to Paris on a Bernardet scooter, a vehicle on which he crisscrossed the city for 3 months to keep his appointments in various sites. In addition to the medical approach, he also discovered the functional approach to the voice, attending the work carried out by Madame Claire d'Inville, a speech therapist trained by Suzanne Borel-Maisonnier, who was Jean Tarnot's assistant. He also took the opportunity to ask Madame d'Inville, a former singing teacher and pupil of Nino Valin, to perfect his vocal technique. Back in Lyon, he set up the first phoniatric consultation at the University ENT unit at Édouard Herriot Hospital in Pavillon U, in a basement that was rapidly converted for the purpose, where he provided both diagnosis services and functional rehabilitation. In 1956, Guy met Jean-Claude Lafont, who had come to Lyon from Strasbourg for a few years, at the instigation of Professor Mounier-Kuhn, to set up the Centre d'Audiophonologie at Hôpital Édouard Herriot. Dr. Lafont brought with him a sonograph K, which Guy says profoundly changed his approach to voice. Acoustic analysis was in its infancy, and the ability to see what the ear heard fascinated him. In praise of Jean-Claude Lafont, Guy said, "I was immediately seduced and impressed by his enthusiasm for research, by his tireless energy, by his uncompromising scientific spirit always on the alert, by the originality of his views, and by his ever-present sense of humor." Guy worked with Jean-Claude Lafont for several years before Jean-Claude returned to Besançon. Together, they published several important articles on respiratory and vocal physiology, including the impaired theory of phonation, presented in the audiology journal Messages et Phonétique. It was also Jean-Claude Lafont who launched Guy into the world of international phoniatry, meeting the famous Dr. Pereyo and Dr. Curato, among others. They also initiated the training of speech therapists in Lyon, at a time when this discipline did not yet exist in France. In 1958, Guy submitted his medical thesis on breathing in the spoken and sung voice, which remains a benchmark. He then pursued his phoniatric diagnostic and functional activities in Pavillon U at the Edouard Herriot Hospital, alternating with his private practice from 1963 onwards. It was in his private practice that he bought his first Brilliant Care stroboscope in 1972, which he says emitted a red light that sometimes frightened patients, and which he coupled with the use of the laryngeal mirror. Over the years, the question arose of improving the surgical management of his patients with chronic benign laryngeal lesions. At the time, no ENT surgeons in Lyon had an interest in that subject. At the end of the 60s, Guy Cornu approached Marc Bouchaillet, with whom he began a collaboration that was to become exemplary. Together, they first went in Barcelona to meet Josep Prades, famous Spanish surgeon, who practiced at that time ear and laryngeal microsurgery. About 10 years later, in 1979, they met Professor Minoru Hirano in Kurume, Japan, who was then considered the world's leading authority on phoniatry and phonosurgery. During their stay, they also met the Professor Shigeji Saito in Tokyo, who was publishing a lot on phonosurgery. Guy Cornu and Marc Bouchaillet's collaboration would continue for almost 30 years, helping to define modern phoniatry and phonosurgery, which are still completely relevant today alongside more recent developments. I will not go into the details of all the work, publications and training courses that have been carried out as a result of this innovative collaboration, which was way ahead of its time. However, along all of these, their international course in phonosurgery is worth mentioning. Between 1986 and 1999, Guy Cornu and Marc Bouchaillet organized 10 of these famous conferences, during which live phonosurgery procedures were shown and theoretical lectures given. And we see here at the right part of the screen pictures taken in the last phonosurgery course in 1999, where you can see Marc Guy, Minoru Hirano, Marie-Agnès Faure, and Paul Bocuse, the famous Paul Bocuse. To further disseminate their expertise, the two masters published their 2 video textbooks on phonosurgery and video stroboscopy in 1994 and 1998. At a time when the internet and YouTube had not yet made videos and tutorials of all kinds available to almost everyone, these 2 books served as a reference for continuing education for many of their phonosurgery and phoniatry colleagues. Parallel to this rich professional life, and even after his retirement, Guy Cornu maintained an intense musical activity as an accomplished pianist, but above all as a composer and a choral conductor. Following the Chorale Mixte Universitaire de Lyon, which he directed for 10 years from 1953, he founded the Ensemble Vocal Guy Cornu in 1963, which later became the Ensemble Vocal de Lyon. He was musical director until 2016, but remained very close to the ensemble after his retirement. On December 9, 2023, 1 month before his death, he attended the 60th anniversary concert of the Ensemble Vocal, now directed by Ophélia Besson. And we won't forget the last concerts he conducted in the Easter season of 2022 and 2023, giving 4 performances of Johann Sebastian Bach St. John's Passion, a work he was particularly fond of. To conclude, I would like to quote, among many others, the fine tribute paid to him by Professor Philippe de Joncker, an illustrious member of our society. Philippe says, "It so happened that in September 2023, I had the pleasure of paying him a special tribute. The organizer had asked me to organize a roundtable on voice on set with Johan Zunberg, Malte Kobe, and others. In my introduction, I showed a photo of Mr. Cornu, as well as the title page and several of the figures from his 1959 article, co-written with Jean-Claude Lafont, L'attaque, phase critique de la phonation, explaining that we could only add a few nuances and details, the essentials having been set out so clearly by Mr. Cornu 64 years ago. I will end by sharing this brief video with you. In 2018, I represented Guy Cornu at a French symposium to which he had been invited, but which he was unable to attend due to his frail health. His words at the time are still relevant today, and hearing the voice of this master remains as moving as ever.
Je souhaiterais d'abord vous exprimer mes regrets de ne pas être parmi vous aujourd'hui en raison de mes problèmes de santé. Il y a quelques mois, j'espérais récupérer plus rapidement une bonne forme physique, ce qui n'a pas été tellement le cas. Je remercie Bruno Colombo, mon successeur à Lyon, de lire mon texte et éventuellement de participer à la discussion à ma place, car il connaît parfaitement mon point de vue sur ce sujet.
This has been a great tribute, even short in time, but very deep and intense and very, very lively as we remember all the time our dear Guy. Dear Guy, CoMeT family is all the time with you. We share many, many things. And of course, we enjoy your presence with your dear friends, Mark, and your dear pupils or students, even though they are really adult, Roman and Bruno. And I would like to honor you and honor your family because you made a very important school in Lyon. And I will always remember that, and I invite everybody to read your work, to read La Voix, to see the wonderful videotapes that you and Mark developed, and mainly to not forget that between music and phoniatry is Guy Cornu as one of the greatest and dearest Collegium Medicorum Theatri family members. Thank you very much. And I would like to open the microphones if somebody from our dear CoMeT members would like to say some words. You are dearly invited. If you want to say something, Annie is with us. And Annie, as you know, you belong to our CoMeT family just as Guy did. And if somebody wants to speak, please let me know. I do not know if Philippe can speak or Jürgen or Tom. Okay. So Annie again and Bruno, thank you very much for this wonderful presentation and many dear greetings to Samuel also. and we shall stay with you all the time. Please let us know if we can provide some emotional support. Thank you very much. And let's keep on with our program, please. The next slide. Thank you. And the next one. Well, now I am going to leave the microphone to our General Secretary, Erky Bianco. As you know, he's the president of the next annual conference in Paris. And well, he invited us and he has some remarks to make. And the next one, please. He has the next slide, please. He invited as a special guest speaker. Please, Erky, can you present? It's a short presentation of Christine Petit. Erky is going to tell us about her.
I wanted to invite to the conference a very good neuroscientist, and she wanted to speak of the importance of neurosciences to the perception of musical sounds. So she's going to do a long presentation, which is very interesting. And then you can see all the things she made, and it's a very long list. You could have at least 15 pages of the same importance. So it's very important that she agreed to come and speak about neurosciences on the perception of music. And next CoMeT in Paris is going to be in the Paris Opera. Let us use.
Excuse me, Erky, can we have the next slide, please, for the program?
I don't have which slide.
Yes, you can say the next slide, and so they are going to change your presentation. Yes, please, Erky. Thank you.
So we have a meeting on the 17th with a theater and a welcome drink, and then on the 18th and the 19th we have the presentation of the CoMeT members, plus the one of Christine Petit, and the director of the opera was supposed to come, but he's going to be in Japan for this time, but then it's too bad. And then we are going to visit also the Bastille, which is an incredible place such a huge place with different plateaus. So it's interesting to see how the opera really works. And then we're going to be meeting at the Atelier Lyrique, which is where a lot of the very famous young opera singers work nowadays. And we'll have presentation normally from 9:30 to 6 for the 2 days. If you have any questions.
Yes, thank you, Erky. And let me show the other slides. Can we have the next slides? Yes, and yes, and this is important because Erky is having this invitation that we are going to go to Theatre de la Ville. The next one, please. And yes, Erky, if you want to comment something about this.
Yes, it's the successor of Pina Bausch, who was a very famous dance theater woman for years and years. And then it's an incredible show which finishes on the 17th. So we could have, although it's full, we could have tickets to attend to the last performance on an incredible show which mixes voice, speaking voice, singing voice, and dancing and music. And we could have some seats there. And the welcome drink is going to be also in the theater, which was just rebuilt a few months ago only. So it's very nice to be able to go and meet there for the first time after the COVID.
The next one, please. And of course, if you want to say something about the program, okay.
Yes, we need to have the presentation and organize the program. And it has to last 15 minutes. So it depends if we do the questions after, in between, or maybe it might be a bit shorter to let the questions be held. And we need to have the presentation desire of the people who want to present very soon, so we can organize the program.
Thank you. The next one, please. Yes, you were talking about the visits, Erki, please.
It's very important to visit the Bastille, which is such a huge place with so many employees, and they're building things and they're moving sounds, and it's an incredible place. And also on the Saturday, we're going to visit an incredible opera house with all the buildings under, around, dance music, and all very private visit, which shows how really opera works. So it's two different, the old opera and the new modern building. So it's interesting to see when we speak about singing voice.
That is great. The next one, please. So we send you through our mails the different possibilities of hotels. These hotels, Erki, can you tell something about them in general?
Well, just in front of the opera studio where we're going to have a meeting, in front of Opéra Bastille, and next door is another big hotel, which is a 3-star. And then you also have a very, if you want a more luxury one, Place des Vosges. You have another one, it's maybe you have it on the next slide, which is Pavilion. And another one, which is run by the husband of a speech therapist near my office. It's a 10 minutes walk from the opera. So it's very easy to walk from your hotel to the opera and to the meetings.
The next slides, please. Yes, this is the other you are telling. Yes, Erki?
This is one, they're both one side of another. So it's in front of the opera house, which you see on the right.
The next one, please.
It's Pavilion. No, that's another one made by the speech therapist, owned by the speech therapist. So it's a 10 minutes walk, and it's a very nice, non-expensive hotel. And the last one is, if you want luxury and the most incredible place, which
next
is called
one, please. Yes.
It's de la Reine, and you can check with the website, and it's an incredible place to stay while you're in Paris.
Yes, and can you tell us, please, about the apartment near your office that I shall send the photos? Can you explain to the audience, please?
The apartment?
Yes.
With friend who rents an apartment, so with 2 living rooms. It's very beautiful in an incredible 17th century building, and she can rent it for 3 nights of the conference. So I sent Eugenia the pictures, and it's not a hotel, but it's could be like a Airbnb used for the conference as well. And it's in such a beautiful 18th century building in a private yard, and it's also 10 minutes walk from the opera. And she agreed to rent it for the conference also.
Thank you, Erki. The next one, please. So as closing remarks, I have to tell you about our annual conference. We are still not having all the different situations about dinners. We have already one dinner for 18, but we still, Erki is arranging to have a very special dinner on 19, but we let you know, I hope next week, because we are having some meetings with Austin and Erki about the annual conference and the situations, special situations with some economical issues. But anyway, you shall have in the next week a bank account in order to pay the conference fee. There are going to be 3 conference fees. One conference fee is for CoMeT members, and it includes the visits, 2 lunches, 2 dinners, and of course the academical activities with coffee breaks. And the prize number 2 is for the companions, for the husbands or the wives or the companions. They are coming to the CoMeT activities, not to the academical activities, but to the cultural and social activities. We have to remind you that we are a CoMeT family, and that's why we are having lunch together, dinner together, academical activities also together. And then the third prize is for everybody who wants to come to the academical activities. They will have also a prize. But I urge you, because it has been not so easy to arrange all the details with the Opera House. Erki has been doing that for many months, and it's quite difficult because Opera is supporting CoMeT in a part, and the other part, well, we have a CoMeT member fee. And of course, I urge you to decide as soon as possible. We have already some abstracts from some members that were sent to Erki and to me, and this is a great opportunity to be together in April. April is a very nice month for Paris. It's not so hot, it's not so cold, and it's spring and it's nice. And of course, we are going to be in one of the greatest opera house, La Bastille, and we are going to visit Garnier. And as you see, the opera tradition in Paris in these both houses is extremely interesting, and we are going to enjoy this theater performance that Erki decided for us. And also we are having this guest of honor, Christine Petit, that this is very interesting to have the neurosciences and which is the development about musical perception. And the next one, please. And some issues about our next webinar. This is going to be in February, 24 February, as I sent to you. Please send your proposals, and tomorrow you shall receive a mail from me for all this organization. It's going to be, of course, virtual, and it's going to be for the general population, so you can invite everybody and spread the information. CoMeT is making this artistic voice webinar for all the world. The next one, please. And I remind you that we are going to have a CoMeT session in Santander. Please let me know who is coming to Santander, because Alfonso Borragan, that couldn't come today because of other commitments, is organizing also this CoMeT session. As you know, you sent to me and to Alfonso in order to make a proper CoMeT session according to our bylaws. And the next one is, of course, the next slide, please. The next is next year in the Voice Foundation. Voice Foundation is sponsoring us with the CoMeT session, as we did this year, last year, 23, and we shall have a great experience with the Voice Foundation friends that are also CoMeT members. And the last one, please, about the next slide, please, is about UEP, that unfortunately is very close to Voice Foundation, but it depends on the organizers, not really on us. It's going to be in Prague, 25, and the next slide is going, 26 is going to be in Madrid, in preparation by Isabel Garcia Lopez and by Cory Casanova. They couldn't be today with us, but they send many greetings also to Guy Cornu and his family. The next one, please. And yes, Austin, I may ask you to talk.
Thank you, Eugenia. Yeah, it's very easy to pay the annual fee. You can go to the CoMeT website, and then they'll take you to PayPal, and it's very simple. If you didn't pay for last year, it's still not too late to go ahead and pay also for last year, as well as the coming 2024. But the CoMeT exists on the dues paid And compared to other medical organizations, these are really minimal. So please go ahead and pay your dues, certainly for 2024.
Thank you, dear Austin. The next slide, please. And so now we shall have our picture with all the open cameras. And well, I have special to thank our dear Madame Annie Cornu, our dear Samuel Cornu, and our dearest friend Guy Cornu. You are with us all the time. And I also want to thank our friend, Mr. Charles Oppenheim. Thus, we enjoy very much his presentation and his stories. And well, I think history of great singers and many anecdotes and many stories about their lives are a very good example in the life of Maria Callas. And we are going to discuss in the live discussion after that all the medical, all the emotional, and all the technical situations. Thank you very much, Charles. And mainly, I remind you that you are very welcome to these virtual sessions. I know everybody is now very busy, but CoMeT family needs CoMeT members. So the CoMeT members have to be with our CoMeT family, as Austin says all the time. And do not forget that your presence in these virtual activities are very important because you can give your ideas, your proposals. We are a collegium, and it is very important that we keep on working. I know everybody is very busy all over the world, families and so on, but it's a great pleasure to be with you. Thank you very much. And please, Bruno, Philippe, Annie, Hermut, can you open your macros also? Or if not, Raimundo is going to take the pictures from us all. And I thank you very much. And this was a great, great honor to be with you, especially today. Thank you. And we keep on with live discussion. So I would like to ask, oh, here's Bruno, another picture, please. Yes, thank you. Thank you. And Roman has already gone, no. Okay, well, I know Marc Bouchayer had to leave and he apologizes, but he had a commitment to do. But anyway, the main idea is that we are together. We are very close to Guy Cornu and his family, and we love each other very much in this CoMeT family. Thank you. So we begin with live discussion. Would you like, Bruno, to say something about the singing experience that you made yourself, but also Guy Cornu, in this mixture of science and art that we have in CoMeT? Bruno? Your micro is closed.
Sorry.
Yes.
I didn't understand exactly what you want. My musical experience with Guy?
Yes.
Yeah. I must say that with Guy, I sang a little with him during the last 2 years. Guy gave several concerts of Johann Sebastian Bach Passion, and I was singing with him in the choir. I sang with him years ago as a soloist in some pieces, but overall I went to the concerts. I was not a member of the Ensemble Vocal de Lyon, but I remember a few years ago with Annie Trollier-Cornu, his spouse, we sang several times during your manifestation in Lyon on 8 December. This is a great feast in Lyon, and we sang with Annie Trollier-Cornu and Guy playing the piano. But except that, I sang in other groups, and we worked together. We made sometimes music, but not usually in the ensemble vocal de Lyon. I wasn't singing usually, except these 2 years, 2 past years.
Oh, this
And
is
it
great.
was I didn't sing Guy's compositions, but I sang in the choir 2 times as soloist. What I have to say, it was a very, very great conductor, choir conductor, a great master, obviously, but you know that, all of you, a great master in phoniatry. But in music, he was really a great conductor, sometimes a little bit too precise, I think. We had to sing and sing sometimes 10 times the same phrase to be very precise and to obtain the result he wanted to have. But is it probably it is a quality, and he was a great choir conductor, and what he obtained with the choir made by non-professional singers was really a exceptional result. And when I sang with him in the choir or with Annie, it was the most important thing, I think. I have to say, he managed to obtain with non-professional singers a very, very great result, due, I think, to his extraordinary capability to conduct people, as he did in phoniatry, but that you know that better than me.
Yes, thank you. Tom Harris, do you want to say something about this combination of music education and development and medical education in phoniatrics, like Guy or like you or like Bruno, like me, that like Wolfram and Jürgen, that everybody has also this music and science combination. Tom, do you want to say something?
Yes, I.
You might have to put your
Hang on,
microphone.
microphone. I mean, am I muted? No.
No, I think you're all
No.
right.
What? Can you hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Oh, wonderful. I have to say that Sarah and I will miss the Cornu-Boucher combination, which changed everything we ever did in Britain.
We were lucky enough to go on one of their courses, which was amazing. And then we started noticing all the cysts we'd never seen before. It was a wonderful, wonderful pairing, collaboration between them.
It was literally mind-blowing because in the UK, nothing like that had existed before.
And we have a lovely CD of the ensemble conducted by Guy. Many happy memories of our time in Lyon. And hi, Annie. I don't know whether she remembers us.
But we're still
Yes.
here. Yes.
And would like
we both owe Guy's memory enormous.
Yeah, both of them very much.
Understanding was great,
Yeah.
and we shall miss him.
And their support too of the British Voice Association was invaluable too. They came over many times and helped raise our standards in the UK.
Wonderful. If somebody else wants to say something about this combination, music and science, that Guy and Mark had together, and mainly Guy as composer, as a conductor, as a phoniatrician, with this combination that we now have in our daily world, that we need to be together in different disciplines in order to achieve great success in art and in science. I don't know if someone wants to say something. Jürgen, could you like to say something? Your micro, Jürgen.
Yeah. No, thank you. No other comments.
Okay, so I shall ask Austin, which is his experience about the Maria Callas voice. Would you like to make some comments, because it's interesting to hear the different experiences that we have when we first heard or met Maria Callas. I've never heard, of course, live, but I've heard a lot of her recordings. Some of them are not so good, as we know. Yes, Austin.
Some of the problems, the earlier ones, of course, acoustically, the recordings are not that good. And like you, I'm not quite that old that I remember her at live. But from the medical standpoint, it might be interesting to talk about some of the problems that she faced toward the end of her career when her voice began to change. And there are a lot of comments that I looked at about her weight loss, for example, and it might be interesting to have a comment session on the effect of weight on voice, because my personal experience is that, and this is in younger singers, if they get very much overweight, it affects the support to the voice, causes problems with reflux and sleep apnea, and so it's detrimental to the singer to be overweight. But some of the comments were that when she lost her weight, she lost a segment of her voice, and then the effect of her diagnosis of dermatomyositis. It's a very rare condition, and I've had maybe 2 people in my practice that have had it, mainly with, I've treated for dysphagia, not voice problems, but certainly that can affect the muscle function of the larynx. So from the standpoint of some of the medical conditions she had, it might be interesting to build a comment session around discussion of those types of conditions.
Yes, thank you, Austin. It's great. Yes, Erky?
All the best recording she made was after her weight loss. So all her career, all the great operas she made was after she lost weight. So it's not because of the loss of weight that she lost her voice. She did her career because she lost the weight. It's a film producer who made her lose the weight, and that's how she became very famous. And the most beautiful recording she made was after the weight loss. So you should think about this.
Yes, yes, I agree with. I have also the experience in some singers that when they lose weight, they have the feeling, or sometimes is the reality, that they lost a little bit of support, that the diaphragmatic support. They feel that they are losing diaphragmatic support. So it's interesting, because sometimes we do not have the control, the proprioception of controlling the support. And sometimes, as she said she was losing support. But on the contrary, the recordings were good. So it's interesting to see that. I don't know, Charles, if you, as a singer, you are a bass, do you have some comment to make about this, what Callas felt about her support losing her weight?
It was not only because of her weight loss. What I've read about her, basically, but you do notice that after her weight loss, gradually, although the recordings of her voice with orchestras and studio recordings are very better quality than the ones that we had in Mexico, for example, in the 1950s, the early 1950s. You can start to notice gradually the wobble in her voice as she sings the high notes, and she cannot sustain them without a good vibrato, which is basically regulated by a good support system of the what we call the diaphragm and the intercostal section of the abdomen. Uh, as a singer myself, I've always been overweight. I haven't suffered what other singers that I know have in terms of reflux and in terms of losing the ground, the bottom of their sustenance, of the support of their vocal mechanism. But I do know of other singers that have lost their voice after a dramatic weight loss. This singer, I can't remember her name right now, American singer soprano, who was a very big dramatic voice. She sang Wagner and Strauss, and she was hired to sing Salome at a theater in Europe, and she had agreed in her contract to lose weight to be able to interpret realistically the role of Salome. She was very big, and she did not lose the weight, and she was subsequently suspended from that production. And she wrote in an article, or she commented, and it was taken up by some journalist, that she was not able to sing the dance of the 7 deals, but of the 77 deals. She tried to make this into a commentary, but the fact was that she was not able to sing it because of her physicality. She was let go from that production. But then afterwards, she started losing her voice. The last thing I saw her sing was a Fanchula del West at the Metropolitan Opera, and her voice was not the same. That's one example, but there are many other opinions on voice. There's a cooking book by the prologue is written by Plácido Domingo, who writes about the difficulties of controlling weight among singers that go from the theater to the hotel, to the theater to the hotel, and they only eat and eat and eat. It's impossible to control their weight. Pavarotti had the same particular problem. He grew and grew gradually, and as you know, I mean, he after his sickness, the pancreatic cancer, he began to lose weight. He could not support as well, and even though he was singing into his final months and years after his sickness, he never lost enough weight. So it's a very dramatic situation. But I still believe that despite coming back to Callas, despite the situation of her being so thin and becoming like an icon, this diva for society, this very well dressed and this very beautiful person who was very different from when she began singing, both in Athens and then earlier in Europe and then in Mexico, Argentina, Brazil. She did transform herself, and marketing has a lot to do as well with her placement as an icon. But the way that she expresses herself from the very beginning in those letters that she wrote to Meneghini brings us a bit into her psychology as well. She was uncertain of herself many times in her singing, in her technique, in what was happening to her body, that we cannot really delve into, because her public persona was, I'm a diva. She would never confess, or she would never acknowledge any problems until later in her life. There were several interviews when she would say, yes, well, what do you want? I mean, I'm a human being. I'm not some goddess. Anyway.
Thank you. And well, I do think, Austin, that we can have a session about these issues, because For example, in my studies about allergy, in food allergy, there are also some issues with weight. And of course, thyroid gland is having a lot of situations with the women. And also our daily experiences with singers that have bypass surgery in the stomach or band in the stomach. This is also a big problem, because I remember one of tenor, he lost a lot of brilliance in the high notes and also a lot of power, because he made a bypass surgery and he lost 40 kilos. So it's complicated when we are discussing this situation. And I agree, Austin, we need to talk more about this. I don't know if Bruno, Soledad, Eki, you have to comment something about this connection between support and lost weight? Bruno? No? Yes, Sarah. Sarah, dear.
One of the things I find quite a lot with the clients that I've had, when they lose weight, they get very figure conscious. They like to work hard on the abdominal muscles. They start to wear much tighter things. And they get tighter and tighter there, so that almost the abdominal contents get pushed up under the diaphragm, and it becomes an argument, if you like. And so the support gets harder and harder to control, and everything moves up, and then the strap muscles get tight. And I find they just get tighter and tighter, and getting them to release is quite hard because they're concerned about the figure.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, the proprioceptive awareness is hugely altered if you're going to swing 5 kilos of intra-abdominal stuff around, or and it's suddenly reduced by half. You wouldn't dream of being a top-level sprinter or even a marathon runner without being fit. And if somebody makes you train with 20 kilos around your waist, it changes everything, the sort of proprioceptive awareness, doesn't it? I don't know that I believe very much in, oh, you've got to lose weight. It's purely from an audience perspective, I think, more than for the performer's benefit.
Yes, that's right. Yes, and well, Soledad has a problem with the micro, and well, I would like also to ask Austin, which is your perception about Bruno? Don't go, please. Because I have a question for Bruno. Bruno sings also, as you know. Austin, I wanted to know your comment about the wobble that Callas developed, because I do think that many of her daily problems and her emotional or love problems made everything like insecure, and also the larynx was not working properly because of many other things. I don't know, Austin, if you want to comment something about wobble.
Well, that's difficult, Eugenia. In the past, I think CoMeT had an entire session on vibrato and warble and what causes that from the throat standpoint. And from my memories, it was a very lively discussion. So I'd have to defer. That's a very complicated
Your micro.
Observation. And so maybe some of my other colleagues on
We don't hear you.
Oh.
We can hear.
Can you hear me now?
We can hear.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Did you hear my comments, I guess? Yes. Okay.
Hands up, anyone who feels that their proprioceptive abilities have not deteriorated in the last 30 years, 20 years even. Anyone just as finely tuned as we all are? because we were
And I wanted to ask Bruno, as a singer, what could you comment about this special topic that, as Austin said, we have been discussing a lot about vibrato and wobble. Which is your comment, Bruno? Because you are, as phoniatrician, you look at this a lot, and you sing also.
Bravo.
I say I have to apologize because I was speaking with my family and probably I lost some part of the discussion, so I'm not sure I can comment because I was distracted here.
Don't worry.
I'm sorry.
Yes, which is your comment about vibrato and Google? Because I think that many of the situations with the muscles coordination by a correct vibrato has to be also not only with the physical condition, but also with the emotional and technical condition. What could you comment? Because you sing and you are a phoniatrician.
Yes, if I understand you well, you asked me if emotional conditions can have an action on singing voice.
Yes.
Yes, I think it's quite obvious for me. I'm not sure I understand everything. As a singer, you talk about weight loss.
Yes, I am asking about wobble. What do you think? Why is, in your opinion or in your experience, the situation that Maria Callas developed gradually this wobble that we know, almost tremolo?
When I spoke about this with a colleague a few years ago, and we saw that when Maria Callas lost weight, and at the end of this, not at the end of the career, but at this moment, she was singing when she had to make high pitched sounds. She was putting her arms around the abdomen, as like she wanted to help the support of her voice, as if she had muscle impossibility or difficulties to make the voice. I see. I have an. I'm sorry. You hear me?
Yes, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. So we thought that with the weight loss, she lost two muscle possibilities to make the support of the voice, and she had to help her with the arms to push on the abdomen and on the diaphragm. So she lost with the weight loss muscle power, and probably she lost too good physical condition. If you lose a lot of weight, you lose physical power too. So I don't know if I'm very clear in that what I say.
Oh, yes, of course.
But probably this evolution was due to the muscle impossibility to make the sustain as she did before.
Mm-hmm. And Erki, do you have some comment about this change in vibrato?
There's too long to say, and a lot of proofs to be given, so I don't have time to do it.
Okay. Andrea, would you like to say something about our presentations today?
I agree with Bruno, and I make my compliments to everyone about the presentations. It's all interesting. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, dear friends, I thank you very much. I don't know if somebody wants to make a comment, but let me know. I thank you very much for being here with us. I thank you very much, Madame Annie Cornu, and Bruno, great, and Charles, wonderful experiences, and of course you. And I thank very much Austin and Erky from the board, and we shall see each other tomorrow, please. And we wait for you in Paris. This is the first face-to-face annual conference, so try to be there. I know some of you have some commitments already, but try to be there, okay? And I thank you very much.
Okay.
Bye-bye,
Yeah,
everybody.
bye.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.
Bye.